Hey, come see us in Ashland, Virginia, Athens, Georgia, Rutherford, New Jersey at the Icarus Festival, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Mickey Willis is an investigative journalist and filmmaker dedicated to exposing corruption at the highest levels. In 2020, he released the first installment of his documentary series called Plandemic, which was followed by Plandemic 2, Indoctrination, and Plandemic 3, The Great Awakening. This spring marks the worldwide release of the fourth and final episode, Plandemic the Musical. Please welcome to the show, Mickey Willis. Hey, Mickey, how are you?
Fantastic, Jimmy. Good to see you.
So I just want to show people a clip of this, and then we'll get into the conversation. Look, that's quite a poster for that movie. I love it. Okay, here we go. Here's a little bit of it.
To the great awakening, come on, breathe it in. It's the moment we've been praying for, like trees, roots woven underground, growing so strong. No storm will ever break us down. A seeds turn to treasure, waiting like forever. We were born for this moment, standing strong together. We're standing anywhere. We remember who we are, like the symphony, moving without end. Where it's not trust, love always wins.
Fantastic. That's very catchy. I like it. I saw J.P. Sears in there. That was great too. So tell me about so this, by the way, is going to be premiering at a film festival this weekend. Is that the whole point?
Exactly right. Yeah, the Malibu Film Festival, believe it or not. We just won the Santa Monica Festival, which is a real demonstration of the tide turning, because
wow,
none of these companies would have touched us 2 years ago, but now we're getting calls from mainstream and getting invited to festivals and all over the world. So it's nice to see. So
Mickey, the name Plandemic, it sounds like you're saying that the pandemic was planned by somebody somewhere, and that's a kooky conspiracy theory.
That's conspiracy talk, Mickey.
What do you mean by that, Mickey?
Considering that the vaccines are absolutely safe and effective, I don't know what I was thinking back then, but I was smoking pot back then, and I quit like you. No, I actually never started. Yeah, we kind of rebranded the pandemic, and we were first to release a major warning to the world, and the simple reason is this. People always ask me, how did you see what was coming so early? Plandemic 1 was released May 4th, and so it took 2 months to create it. So if you backdate that, you realize how soon we started on it. And the reason is this. I had a brother that was killed by AZT, which was prescribed by Anthony Fauci in the 80s and 90s.
Wow.
And
so now people pretty much accept that AZT was toxic, right? That's not controversial at all?
It's pretty much mainstream information right now. And the woman who was doing the brave reporting on that in the Rolling Stone and beyond back in the 80s and 90s recently told me that the numbers are in the hundreds of thousands of innocent people, mostly men, that were killed by AZT, which was the miracle cure. And while all these other medicines were kept from the people, just like the remdesivir and ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine story, same thing happened in the 80s and 90s. So when I saw Anthony Fauci resurface in 2020 as at the helm of this response to this global pandemic, I couldn't believe it. First of all, I thought I knew what he had done. My brother was gay, and his community knew what he had done.
So, Mickey, can I just pause you for a second and expound on what you're saying? So there's a movie called The Dallas Buyers Club, which starred Matthew McConaughey. I think he won the Academy Award for it. And I try to tell people over and over, the bad guy in that movie was Dr. Fauci, because he's doing the same thing back then. He was suppressing early treatments, pushing drugs that they could make big profit off of, and he was keeping treatment away from people who desperately needed it, especially experimental treatments, right? And so that's why the Dallas Buyers Club had to happen. If people remember that movie, I'm sure millions of people saw that movie. Matthew McConaughey won the Academy Award for it. So, and people forget who the bad guy was in that movie, and nobody in media would bring that up, including Matthew McConaughey during COVID. So now go ahead, tell me about when you saw him reemerge in 2020.
Well, you just nailed exactly why. I couldn't believe, I didn't know he was even still in business. I kind of let that go when all this took place in my family. What I didn't mention was 34 days later, my mom died. She was a cancer survivor. The guilt of keeping her son on this medication, even though his community was warning him, and all that, when she would go in to tell the doctors, you know, my son is getting worse. He'd look at him, he looks like a skeleton. He was looking good, healthy, handsome. And as soon as we started this medication, he's noticeably worse, diarrhea and vomiting every day, migraine headaches. His quality of life is, he wants to kill himself now at this point. He was told he's just acclimating to the medicine. If you take your son off that medicine, he will die. And so she was forced to follow the science. And when her first son was killed, she was a cancer survivor for 8 years and would have lived a long, healthy life. She was 57 years old. But the guilt and the weight of knowing that she was one of the people that made the decisions to keep her son on this, she literally just lost the will to live. And it taught me a great deal about the power of our will to live, which I think is actually at the root of the agenda of these tyrants, to just take everything that we love away from us, our family, our attraction to the opposite sex, having children. When we lose the will to live, then we lose the will to fight for life. And I think that's really what's at the core of these agendas ultimately.
But you have to generate value for the company. You don't understand. Like you,
yeah.
We have to maximize our stock buybacks on your life.
And so tell me, so when you saw Dr. Fauci reemerge in 2020, did you immediately get to work on a movie called Plandemic?
Well, ironically, a year before that, I was presented, I had a doctor friend of mine who reached out to me and said, there's a doctor, a female doctor with a story, a scientist. She's got an unbelievable story. She actually told me that it's kind of like an Aaron Brockovich story, one woman up against the Goliath of science. And she brought this scientist into my office to meet with me, and it turned out to be Dr. Judy Mikovits. And I sat and I listened to her story for 3 hours. And at the time, I was making a documentary called The Narrative to expose mainstream media, because I'm a media veteran and I've seen it. My life has changed. I was at the World Trade Center in 2001 when it was attacked, and I had a snap to grid moment, came home, packed up everything I had, put it in storage, left Hollywood, wanted nothing to do with it. And so I know the game well enough to know that this woman was telling the truth in the story that she told me of working partially under Anthony Fauci, and the crooked game of science, and the way that the patents worked and the funding and the grants. And she had just told me the story a year before. And when she brought up the name Anthony Fauci, I said, "Oh, wait a minute." I said, is he a very small man? And she said, "Yeah." I said, "This is a guy that killed my brother." I said, "I know exactly who you're talking about." And so when the pandemic was announced in 2020, I called her up, and it turns out she lives 15 minutes from me. And I zipped over to her place, and I sat down and I said, "Judy, just tell me, from your perspective, what do you think is taking place here? I feel like a lot of people are going to be harmed by this. And it's appearing like it's going to be beyond 9/11 of what's taking place here." And she started to roll out what she thought was happening. And 45 minutes into that explanation, I said, "Stop. Would you come back to my studio with me? Let me turn a couple cameras on this, and let's record this, because at the very least, I wasn't able to make your movie. I always felt bad about that because I was committed to another project. But at very least, I'll edit this together as a little podcast, and I'll put it out in the world. And hopefully we'll be able to save some lives, because I agree with you. I think something very nefarious is about to take place here." And so we went back, we did a long interview. I cut it together. While I was editing the interview, I started to deeply research all the points she was making. And everything was checking out. I had attorneys on the line, arresting officers, anyone who worked on her case 10 years ago, I forgot to mention that she was actually terrorized and put in jail for a few days, and her money, everything was taken away from her because she refused to play the dirty game of science. And so everything checked out. I was speaking with, law enforcement that was involved in the case, and they said absolutely 100% what that woman is telling you is how it unfolded. And actually I had an attorney tell me, he said, listen, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't represent her anymore, but she's one of the most honest people that I ever had the honor of representing. And so I decided to raise a little bit of money and turn it into a 30-minute documentary, and that became Plandemic One. And
what exactly was she in prison for? Or arrested for?
So they put her in jail because they said that she stole intellectual property from the lab. And what they had literally done is they had asked her to forge a signature because they were trying to get a grant in the lab. And they said one of the leading scientists, a female scientist, was away. She wasn't able, she was out on a boat or something like that. She wasn't able to get the signature, and they were about to lose this multi-million-dollar grant. And we feel like it'd be fine if you would just sign her name. And she said, you want me to forge a signature? There's no way I'm going to do that. Huh. And so she refused to play the game, and she was actually renting a home from one of the crooked leads of this lab. And they had a key to her home. So one day when she was away, they planted a notebook in her home, which was intellectual property from the lab, had her home raided, found the notebook, and put her in jail for 5 days. When she got out, then, they basically just told her, if you say anything, we're pressing charges and you're going to go down for a federal crime, or shut up. And the brave woman she is, she said, I won't, not only will I not shut up, but I'm going to write books about this.
And what was the whole, why did they want her to sign this thing? Why didn't they just forge it?
So it could be blamed on her.
Well, it's interesting is I believe what it is to get dirt on her. And this is the game. Yeah. This is this is what they do, right? So
too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So now they get her to do something illegal, a federal crime, forgery. And now she recognizes that something has arrived within her lab, something illegal is taking place. Now they have that over her head to say, well, you want to go back to jail, or you want to get charged with this crime? We have this dirt on you. That's what I believe the intention was.
And was there what kind of illegal stuff was the lab doing? Do you know?
It's about 4 years now since she told the whole story. What came from it is her realization that we need to repeal the Bayh-Dole Act, because she said the Bayh-Dole Act is what gave doctors and scientists and universities the ability to profit off of the patents. And so there was a lot of millions of dollars being made to this lab by rejecting things that they were unable to profit off of to patent, and pushing forward things that they could patent and make millions of dollars off of. That's the usual crime of most scientific laboratories.
So Evan Bayh and Bob Dole wrote a law that helped the pharmaceutical industry suppress cheap treatments and in favor of expensive treatments that everybody could profit off of. That's
correct.
Okay, well, that sounds crazy. That I can't believe that ever happened. Of course, that's how it works, right? And so that we're living in that, right? We went through COVID that way. That's why they elevated remdesivir, and they lied to you about. And they propagandized you against treatments like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and made you think that they were dangerous. They made you think that now Chris Cuomo, a guy who smeared everybody from Joe Rogan to anybody who ever brought it up, who took ivermectin, he called it horse paste. A simple Google search would have revealed to him that it was on the WHO list of essential medicine. It won the 2015 Nobel Prize for Human Medicine. It was considered a wonder drug, second to only penicillin. It had been prescribed billions of times, saved billions of lives. But that's what kind of an unnews people work at CNN. He wouldn't even do that. And if he did do that and he was aware of it, he just blatantly lied. So either one is horrible. Either one is horrible. And now he's trying to be a crusader, saying that we were lying. He said he was given bad information about ivermectin. No, you gave people bad information about ivermectin, and then you smeared people who were giving good information. People like Joe Rogan, Dr. McCullough, Robert Malone. You slandered and smeared those people. And so the idea that Chris Cuomo was a victim of bad information is a false narrative. And So now he's trying to do that to save his reputation. So that's exactly the game that's being played, and they played it to a T. And I just played a video at my show on Sunday. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whatever you think about him, he predicted exactly what Fauci and Collins and the criminals who were running COVID would do during COVID. He predicted they would come out and say it's 100% effective. Then they would say, oh, it's 90%. Then it's 80%. And when they get down to 30%, then they're going to say you're going to need another dose. And then we need another dose, and it's either going to be monthly or yearly. And that's exactly, it worked out perfectly. Wait till I drop that video tomorrow. It worked out exactly as RFK Jr. predicted. And that's because he didn't have, he didn't memory hole Dr. Fauci's past, and neither did you. And so Plandemic was about this woman and about the criminality involved in pharmaceuticals. That's basically what it's about.
That's basically what it's about, yeah. And then Plandemic 2, which we called Indoctrination, because it was about the indoctrination of the medical industry, then followed the paper trail all the way to the front door of the Wuhan lab. So we found all the papers that proved that the NIH funded gain of function research, created the lab. We followed it to the universities that were involved, and we were called crazy conspiracy theorists. And now it's all over the news.
Now the NIH admits they were funding gain of function. Now they finally admit. And Dr. Fauci, I've said this on the show many times. I showed the video of him lying to Congress about funding gain of function research. He lied twice to Congress, and of course he'll never be prosecuted because he was lying at the behest of the establishment that owns the Congress, which is the military-industrial complex, because he was the head of the bioweapons department of the Pentagon, Dr. Fauci, and he was doing that lying at the behest of Big Pharma, which also owns our politicians. So there'll never be anybody to prosecute him. If you lie, you don't get in trouble for lying, you get in trouble for telling the truth, which is why you were ostracized, and Julian Assange is in prison, and Edward Snowden has to live in Russia, and I got bogus strikes on my videos about the pandemic and about the efficacy of the vaccine. What do you want to say, Kurt?
Do you remember when we had RFK on and we were playing, I can't remember, it was the British Minister of Lockdowns or whatever his dumb position, and his text came out, the guy that ended up on Big Brother.
Yes.
And he said, when do we deploy the new variant? And I remember very well, we're like, that's weird. And RFK goes, I don't even know what to make of that. Well, I think I do know what to make of that.
Yeah. So now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I don't know if there have been clips of my movies played on your show quite a bit. So we did the War on Ivermectin with Pierre Corey, and a lot of different pieces that I have seen on your show. So thank you for putting those out there. I don't even know if you knew that they were excerpts from the Pandemic series. Yeah, there's quite a few of them that you've played on your show. But the show how brazen that they are, that they would demonize medications that have been around for 40 to 70 years, that won Nobel Prizes in biochemistry for the people who invented these things, that they would do that they would use a PCR test whose inventor, Kary Mullis, came out very vocal saying it should never be used to detect a virus. It's not what he invented it for. And ironically, suspiciously, he died just shortly before the pandemic was announced. So that's something that I think should be investigated one of these days, because he would have been a very, very vocal critic. He hated Anthony Fauci, called him a worthless bureaucrat, said he knew nothing. About medicine, and so he would have been the loudest opponent against this whole situation. And I think it's interesting that he chose to leave this planet, or was ushered off this planet a year before, or 9 months or something like that, before the pandemic was announced. And so, yeah, it's coming to light, but the one thing, the upside to all of this, and I'm a diehard optimist. I try to find the divinity in everything, which is also why I have to say that out of all the videos I've watched of yours, the one that I love the most is the why I quit smoking pot video, because where you went there, in that video with understanding. I've been studying the work of Carl Jung for years and did shadow work deeply back in the early 2000s. I made a movie called The Shadow Effect based on his work.
Oh, no kidding.
And yeah, so I just really appreciated the insights, understanding how you connect the dreams with reality, how, and even it was wonderful to hear you even make the distinction between religion and God, because, you turned away from God or from religion because of Catholicism. I was raised with none of it. I had only been in churches for funerals and weddings. growing up. And I had an aunt and uncle that became born again Christians, and I watched my family completely push them away because they were trying to convert everyone. And so as a young child, I decided, don't go anywhere near this thing, this God thing, because it's bad. That's how you lose family. Through this experience, Jimmy, of having really, having to go deep to deal with losing, people always ask me, I bet you lost a lot of friends through this. And I always say, not one. I lost a lot of people that I thought were my friends.
Right.
But you don't lose friends over telling the truth. Even if you have it, even if what I was saying was inaccurate and it was my opinion, you still shouldn't lose a friend over that. And so it was, there's been a lot of soul searching that I've had to do since 2020 of really recalibrating what matters to me, my wife, my children, my health, my community, and how do I become a truer, more loyal friend to the people around me? Because experiencing that instantaneous disloyalty of having people that I knew for 20 years suddenly go out online to make sure the world knew that they used to love me, now they hate me, distance themselves from me, was a real wake-up call to how fragile we've become in the face of being liked. And that's what I mean by that is very, very intentional. In 2008, I was studying user interface I was developing a distribution platform. And so I was studying the user experience of where to place buttons and what to call them and how to get more engagement on a site, and trying to solve the problem of the independent films not reaching the audience that they should reach. And during this process is when Facebook changed their button from an awesome button to a like button. And I remember thinking, God, that goes against everything I'm studying right now. That's a weird thing. Like, I like you. Like, now I have to be liked. And now I understand that that too was part of the psychological subversion. Yep. Because now we have a world that is addicted. Like is a currency. So now you have to say what others like. And if you get a reduction in likes, then it's a reduction in your self-value. And so that caused our world to start self-censoring just based on being liked. And I didn't even know how addicted I had become to being liked until I was suddenly disliked by half the world. And I realized, like, I got to grow a pair here and get past that and just do my work and come here and know if I'm operating with integrity, doing my homework to know what I'm doing is truthful, it's honest, then let them come and go. I don't need 1,000 people in my life. I have the people around me that I love. And so, and then through the process of that, circling back to your video, it's brought me into a relationship with this thing called God. And I still see the short fallings of religion and what that can cause on a negative scale. But I'll tell you, the bravest people that I'm working with right now, and I do interviews weekly all over the nation with people who have stepped forward, whistleblowers. I have 4 movies in production right now. And either people are stepping into realizing that there is some intelligent force behind this design that we call life, or they're actual Christians, people I would have judged just a few years ago, that are the bravest people that are in true humble service to the rest of humanity. They're rescuing kids from the border. I live in Texas. They're rescuing kids and bringing kids from Guatemala and all over the place into their home to rescue them when they're being abandoned by their families and by coyotes. And so it's changed my perspective, particularly moving out of California, which is where I was born and raised, and being here in Texas surrounded by the people that I was always told were the bigoted, greedy, uncaring people of the world. And to see that because they have a foundation of family and faith, they're some of the best people that I've ever had the honor of associating with. And it's also, there's a part of us that have been convinced that we're consumers. They call us consumers. And the action of consumption is to take. So consumers take, but we're really creators. We're here to create. We create through comedy, through laughter. There's a lot of laughter in this movie. We did a premiere in Las Vegas. It was standing ovation, tears of joy. It was it was therapeutic for me because after, quite a few years, I was going to say 4 years of doing movies about the pandemic. Even before then, I was doing political documentaries. So after years of just absorbing all of the nastiest stuff that's happening in our nation and beyond, it was such a relief to be involved in this film and to just bring us back into a place of celebration, to remember truly who and what we are, and that as long as we're alive, there's always something to celebrate, and that we have to counter the negativity, the 24/7 negativity that comes at us from all directions. We have to counter that with laughter. That's why I'm a big fan of everything you do, Jimmy, because while you're one of the best voices for bringing out truth, and it's such a gift to the world to watch you evolve through this process, which has given all of us the gift to evolve with you. You also do it laced with a laugh, and that is so important because it's a delivery system that otherwise the brain might shut off, but the laughter allows it in. So when we understand that these gifts, these tools that we've been given, we must never let them go, and we must use them for good. That's the way that we stand up as the people, and we take what's rightfully ours back.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I'm flattered. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing this. When will it? Will people be able to see it? Unless if you can't get to the Malibu Film Festival this weekend, when do you think it'll be able to be seen?
Yeah, we'll go to MalibuFilmFestival.com and you can get your tickets there. We'll be there live. And I want to thank David Katz, the brave founder of Malibu Film Festival, for bringing this film to the people. And then we have an Austin premiere on June 15th, the big cast and crew screening. If you're anywhere near Texas, come join us. You can go to Plandemic.com for those tickets. And then shortly after, probably in July, we're going to release it to the world. And all of my films and even my book are free. I refuse to profit off the Plandemic brand whatsoever. So if you go to Plandemic.com, all the Plandemic movies are there, plus the snippets, a lot of the ones that you've shared on your show, as well as my book. Download it for free. All
right. Fantastic. I'm glad to help raise awareness of your work. It's fantastic. Mickey Willis, the new movie is the Plandemic, The Great Awakening.
No, the musical.
I'm sorry, the musical. Correct.
That's right.
Right. All right. It looks great. Mick, we'll definitely have to keep this conversation going. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me, Jimmy.
Okay. Thank you, pal. Here on tour in Ashland, Virginia, Athens, Georgia, Rutherford, New Jersey, Minneapolis, Ontario, California, Las Vegas, Chicago, Illinois, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.